My daughter was crying in the bathroom when my mother served dessert. No one noticed. Or if they did, no one cared enough to ask why. That was the moment I knew, with absolute, bone-deep certainty, that I would never forgive them. Before we begin the story, how old are you, and where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to know. Now, enjoy the story. My name is Lauren. I'm 35. I'm an ER nurse, a single mother, and until last Christmas, I truly believed that blood meant something. That if I worked hard enough, gave enough, forgave enough, there would be room for me, and for my daughter, at the family table. But love, it turns out, has terms in some families. And mine had been quietly rewriting them for years. The day started with good intentions. I came off a double shift at 6:40 a.m., blinking into the December cold, bleary-eyed and aching but grateful. Harper and I had a plan. She would drive to my parents' house at noon. I'd follow an hour later after grabbing a shower and trying to look festive. Just one dinner. One meal. I told myself I could survive anything for a few hours. But when I pulled into the driveway, Harper's car was already parked outside, alone. Snow clung to its roof, untouched. My chest tightened. Inside, I was met with the usual chaos. My mother fluttering between dishes, my father fiddling with the fireplace, Amanda's perfect children squealing over new gifts. I scanned the room, found no sign of Harper. "She's upstairs," my sister Amanda said, barely glancing at me. Said she had a headache or something. My mother didn't even look up from the gravy. "Everything okay?" I asked quietly, but no one answered. I found Harper sitting on the closed toilet lid, hands clenched in her lap, mascara smudged. She looked up at me and tried to smile. "They didn't set a place for me," she whispered. There was no chair. No plate. The silence in that moment was deafening. "They said the table was full," she added, eyes brimming. "That it was just tight this year." Tight. A table that had room for Amanda's husband's cousin, a man I'd never met, but not for my daughter. My daughter, who had driven herself here on icy roads, in her green dress and carefully straightened hair. Who had wrapped gifts with her own allowance money. Who had been told, with practiced casualness, that there was no room for her. I sat beside her and took her hand. "I want to go home," she said. Not angry. Just tired. So we did. I walked downstairs, thanked my mother for the invitation, and told Amanda I hoped her kids enjoyed the new tablets I'd bought them. No one asked why we were leaving early. The next morning, I emailed the family group thread, the one we used for birthdays and scheduling dinners and pretending we liked each other, and told them this would be our last Christmas together. That from now on, Harper and I would be celebrating holidays on our own. My mother replied within an hour. "Lauren, you're being dramatic. We simply didn't have the space." Amanda chimed in. "Maybe if Harper hadn't insisted on coming late, we could have accommodated her." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. What they didn't know, what they still don't know, is that something shifted in me that night. Something final. I stopped hoping to be seen. I stopped asking to be included. And I started planning. Not a dramatic retaliation. Not some grand, televised betrayal. Just something quiet. Precise. It started with Harper's college fund. And it ends with a "will none of them saw coming." But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because before any of that, before the account transfers, before the lawyer, before the letters, I had to understand how we got here. And that meant going back. Way back. To the moment I realized my family didn't forget Harper by accident. They excluded her on purpose. My mother didn't forget my daughter. She erased her, neatly, deliberately, like someone scratching out a name from a guest list with a felt-tip pen. The deeper truth, the one I hadn't been ready to face until that night, was that she'd been doing it for years. In pieces. In smiles that didn't reach her eyes. In gifts that grew smaller. In compliments that skipped her entirely. I used to explain it away. Tell myself Eleanor Mitchell was just traditional. Particular. Stuck in her ways. But when Harper sat alone upstairs with her dignity crumpled in her lap, something broke in me that had been straining for a long time. I didn't tell Harper everything. Not then. I let her sleep late the next morning, made cinnamon toast the way she liked, with too much butter, edges perfectly browned, and sat at the table reading the legal folder that had been sitting in my closet since summer. Grandpa's trust, drafted just after his death and meant to be reviewed when you're ready, as his lawyer had said. I'd tucked it away, thinking I'd deal with it during spring break or summer vacation. But now, in the brittle quiet of December, it felt like it had been waiting for me. I unfolded the last page with numb fingers. To my granddaughter Lauren, I leave my entire inheritance, the Mitchell family property, the mineral rights from our Colorado land holdings, and the remainder of my personal savings, with the explicit understanding that she may allocate portions at her discretion. No other family member is entitled to any share. I stared at the words for a long time. Not because I didn't understand them. But because I did. He had seen what I hadn't wanted to see. The favoritism. The imbalance. The quiet cruelty masked as tradition. It wasn't just a gift. It was a verdict. He had chosen me because I had protected Harper. Because I had built a life with my own hands. Because, as he once told me in the garden when I was 17, character is what you do when you're tired and no one is watching. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. Tired in a way I hadn't realized until that moment. I spent the next week in silence. No replies to Amanda's texts. No calls to my mother. I worked my shifts, came home, took Harper ice skating downtown, watched her face soften in the cold as she focused on balance and momentum. There's something clarifying about motion, you can't dwell when your knees might buckle at any moment. But the letter stayed in my purse. Every day. Just in case I forgot what we were owed. On New Year's Day, Amanda called while I was folding laundry. I let it ring. Then she sent a message. We missed you at brunch. Mom says you're overreacting. Just talk to her. Overreacting. As if there hadn't been an empty place at the table where my daughter should have been. As if Harper had imagined the folded napkins, the perfectly spaced silverware, the chair missing from the end. I didn't answer. Instead, I called Thomas Blackwell. He was old school, voice rough from decades of courtrooms and mediation, manners sharp enough to cut. Grandpa's lawyer. Mine now. When I explained what I wanted, he didn't ask why. He simply said, understood. Let's schedule a review. You'll want to formalize your intentions. That night, Harper found me on the couch with my laptop open and papers spread across the coffee table. Whatcha doing? I smiled gently. Just sorting through some old things. She sat beside me, rested her head on my shoulder. Are we going to Grandma's next year? I paused, then kissed her forehead. No, honey. We're going somewhere better. She didn't ask where. She just nodded. As if part of her already knew that things were shifting, even if she didn't yet understand how much. The meeting with Thomas was quiet, methodical, and oddly comforting. He asked about Harper's education plans. I told him about her love of photography, her dreams of working in conservation media. He listened without interrupting. Then he said, would you like to set up a living trust in her name? That way, no one can contest it. Not even your mother. I nodded. Yes. That's exactly what I want. We finalized the documents that afternoon. I left the office with a folder tucked beneath my arm and a strange steadiness in my chest. Outside, the air smelled of salt and snow, that rare, briny sharpness that comes off the lake when the wind cuts hard enough. I walked to my car slowly, letting the cold clear my mind. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way I had been. What I felt was older than anger. Wiser. The thing that follows betrayal and grows roots. Resolve. Over the next few weeks, I began making quiet shifts. I canceled the joint family savings account I'd set up years ago to help with group emergencies. I transferred Harper's college fund into a secure trust with her as the sole beneficiary. I changed the emergency contact on all my hospital paperwork from my mother to Meredith, my colleague and closest friend, who had always shown up when others didn't. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. A steady removal of access. A quiet reshaping of boundaries. I still attended Amanda's daughter's ballet recital. Still sent birthday cards to my nieces and nephews. I still replied with emojis in the family group chat when someone posted a picture of the dog in a sweater. But emotionally? Financially? I was gone. Then, 1 week before Harper's spring break, Amanda called again. Her voice was unusually warm. Mom's planning Easter brunch. She wants to include Harper this time. Said it was a misunderstanding. I listened to her talk, wondering if she heard herself. A misunderstanding. Like Harper had accidentally been left off a spreadsheet. Like no one had noticed she didn't have a place at the table. Like no one had laughed when she brought her homemade cranberry tart and set it, hesitantly, on the counter beside the store-bought pies. I said nothing for a moment. Then, "I'll think about it." She sounded surprised. "You're not saying no?" "No," I replied calmly. "I'm just not saying yes." And I meant it. Because this time it wasn't about being included. It was about whether I even wanted to be part of something that could erase a child so easily. I hung up, sat in the stillness, and looked at the calendar. March was approaching. And with it, an opportunity. Not to hurt them. But to show them, finally, clearly, that erasure works both ways. And I had just the plan to do it. Guilt is the currency of control in my family. And silence is how it accumulates interest. 2 days after Amanda's call, my mother sent a card. Thick cream stationery, her handwriting careful and floral. On the front, an embossed cross with lilies. Inside, "Easter isn't Easter without family. We hope to see you and Harper this year." There was no apology. Just expectation disguised as warmth. That was her way, to pretend the wound didn't exist, and then chastise you for flinching when she pressed into it. Harper opened the envelope while I stirred pasta on the stove. I heard the tear of paper, the pause, the breath she held. "She still signs things with love," she murmured, almost amused. "She never says it, but she writes it." I turned off the burner. "Do you want to go?" I asked, gently. She shrugged. "Do you?" We left it there. But the card stayed on the fridge for exactly 2 days before I took it down. Not angrily. Just, decisively. At work, the hospital was understaffed again. Meredith and I traded glances across the trauma bay as another ambulance pulled in. "You okay?" she asked while we washed up, the fluorescent lights above us harsh and unforgiving. I nodded. "I'm thinking about Easter." She waited. "They're inviting Harper this year. But only because they know I'm watching." She didn't say I was being paranoid. She didn't offer empty reassurance. Just rinsed her hands and dried them slowly. "Then, you could always do something different." I looked at her. Just because it's a holiday doesn't mean you owe them anything. It was the kind of sentence that lands deeper than intended. Because she was right. But also because I realized, in that moment, that I'd never considered doing anything else. Not really. I had built my entire adulthood on managing expectations I never agreed to. At home, Harper was in her room editing photos, her new passion. She'd spent weekends hiking solo trails with a second-hand DSLR I bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. The images she captured were startling. Sparse. Honest. That night, I asked if she'd ever wanted to display them. She blinked. "Like, in a gallery? Or at school?" "Anywhere." She hesitated. "Maybe. And I saw it, the hesitation of someone who had grown used to being overlooked. I stayed up late after she went to bed, scrolling through local art centers and youth photography showcases. Sent 3 inquiries. Bookmarked 2 deadlines. The next morning, I called Thomas Blackwell. I want to transfer the family land into Harper's trust. He didn't ask why. He just said, let's meet next week. The land in Colorado was nothing flashy, mostly undeveloped, tucked into a quiet valley, but it had been in the Mitchell family for 4 generations. My father used to talk about building a cabin there, back when we still camped in the summers. That dream died somewhere between his new Lexus and my mother's obsession with her formal dining room. But I remembered the place. The silence. The way the light hit the ridge at dawn. And I wanted Harper to have something untouched. Something entirely hers. By Wednesday, the documents were filed. I didn't mention it to anyone. Not even Harper. Not yet. Because I knew what was coming. Amanda called again the week before Easter. Her voice was clipped this time. You haven't RSVP'd? No. Silence. Then, Mom says you're being unkind. That Harper would be hurt if she wasn't included. I closed my eyes. Amanda, she was excluded. She exhaled hard. I knew you were going to make this about last year. There it was. The rewrite. The revision. The gentle erasure of context. We're not coming. Click. The next day, the group chat lit up. A flurry of messages. Memes. Photos of my mother's Easter tablescape with pastel napkins folded into rabbit ears. Amanda posted a picture of Zoe's recital dress. My father sent a joke about aging in jelly beans. All of it calibrated for unity. None of it addressed us directly. But I knew it was for us. And that was the point. Harper watched from the corner of the room, scrolling silently. You don't have to read it, I said, quietly. She shrugged. It's kind of funny. They act like we're ghosts. She didn't say it with malice. Just resignation. And that's what hollowed me out the most, that she didn't expect to be remembered. That night, she came into my room holding her laptop. There's a call for submissions at the gallery downtown. High school artists. Any medium. Her voice trembled slightly. Would it be stupid if I tried? I set my book down. No, I said. It would be brave. She stood there for a moment, then nodded. That weekend, we spent 2 quiet days printing her photos, mounting them with precision. She titled the series Quiet Evidence. Black and white images of forgotten places, rusted swings, overgrown trails, the edge of a frozen lake. Places people passed through without seeing. They're about what gets ignored, she said. I didn't say anything. I just hugged her. Easter Sunday arrived. I worked a short shift in the morning, then came home to find Harper in jeans and a hoodie, barefoot on the porch with a cup of tea. We ate leftovers for dinner. Watched a documentary about national parks. Around 8 p.m., I got a text from Amanda. I hope you're happy. I turned the phone off. A week later, the gallery called. Harper's submission had been accepted. The showcase would run for 3 weekends starting in May. She stood frozen in the kitchen, holding the phone like it might vanish. They said they want to use one of my pieces for the poster, she whispered. The one with the empty bench. I watched her process the validation, like sunlight warming a cold room. That night, she started designing her display. And I started writing letters. Not angry ones. Not explanations or arguments. But documents. Updates to the trust. Contingency plans. A sealed envelope to be delivered to each family member in the event of my death, outlining the full scope of the inheritance, and their exclusion from it. Not to punish. But to make something very clear. You can choose who you love. But you don't get to choose who remembers. And when Harper's gallery night came, and I stood beside her in that quiet room surrounded by strangers who saw her. I felt it again, that shift. That sliver of something honest. We were building something they couldn't erase. And I hadn't even told them yet. Some betrayals take years to complete. Others only need one quiet moment to click fully into place. The gallery was warm with halogen lights and soft murmurs. Harper's photographs hung on white walls, framed in pale wood, her name in small print beneath each one. I stood a step behind her as people paused in front of her work. No one asked where her grandparents were. She didn't seem to notice their absence. Or maybe she did, and had already decided it meant nothing. When the curator approached her with a business card and soft congratulations, she took it with steady hands. She thanked her politely, then looked at me across the room, as if to check if she was allowed to feel proud. That look sat with me all night. Later, after we got home and she went to bed, I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. I hadn't intended to go deeper that evening, but something inside me refused to let it wait. I pulled up the documents from Thomas again. Reviewed the disbursements. Harper's trust was already protected, untouchable by creditors or claims. But the estate still had shadows clinging to it. Quiet clauses from the family's original trust that hadn't been updated since my grandfather passed. I flagged the ones that mattered. Property rights. Mineral claims. A dated power of attorney form listing my father. By midnight, I had a list. Not of tasks. Of vulnerabilities. That's how I began to think of it, not as revenge, but as fortification. A closing of gates before anyone realized the doors had ever been open. The next morning, I called Meredith from the hospital. Asked if she could cover one of my weekend shifts. "Everything okay?" she asked. "I just need a little time to sort through something." She didn't press. That Friday, I met with Thomas in his office. It smelled of leather and wood polish, and the air had that stillness I always associated with old power, the kind passed down in envelopes, not earned in court. He skimmed my notes. Nodded. "You want to modernize the language. Reassign beneficiary triggers. Close loopholes." "Yes." He smiled faintly. "You're your grandfather's granddaughter." We spent 3 hours reviewing every clause. We replaced archaic terms. Removed any conditional phrasing that could invite challenge. Clarified Harper's rights to the land, the accounts, the residual income from mineral leasing. Then we drafted a secondary declaration, my own, stating that, in the event of my incapacitation or death, the estate would remain entirely within Harper's trust, with Meredith as trustee until Harper turned 25. It was clean. Unarguable. Legally sound. I signed it all in silence. On the drive home, I stopped at a small cafe I used to visit during nursing school. I sat at a corner table with my tea, watching the steam curl toward the window. Outside, the city moved around me. Fast, distracted, endless. No one knew what I was doing. Not Amanda. Not my parents. Not Harper. And I liked it that way. Because what I was building wasn't a wall. It was a boundary. A legacy written on my own terms. At home, I filed the papers in my lockbox. Wrote instructions in my journal. Then I took Harper out for dinner, just the two of us, in a booth with candles and cloth napkins. She told me someone at school had complimented her photos. That a teacher had asked if she'd consider applying to an arts college. "I don't think I'm good enough," she said. I set down my fork. "You're allowed to be exceptional." She didn't argue. Just smiled faintly, eyes lowered. That weekend, Amanda sent a photo in the group chat, my mother's birthday brunch. Croissants, mimosas, a long table set for 8. No invitation, no mention of us. Just the image. I stared at it for 10 seconds, then deleted the thread. And I didn't think about it again. Instead, I called the land assessor in Colorado. Asked for an updated valuation. Then I contacted an environmental consulting group about long-term conservation options. Harper's land wasn't just a patch of woods. It sat on an aquifer. There was value beneath the soil, and value in preserving it. I wanted her to have both. That Tuesday, the assessor called back. "You're sitting on something significant," he said. I listened carefully. What he described was more than I expected. Potential leasing value in the seven-figure range. And with Harper's trust structured properly, it would be hers, all of it, before her 25th birthday. I thanked him. Hung up. Then I sat on the edge of my bed and breathed through the tremor that ran through me. Because I knew what would happen if they found out. Amanda. My mother. Even my father, who rarely said anything unless someone gave him permission. They would come for it. Not directly. Not at first. But through stories. Justifications. Pity. The same old playbook they used when my grandfather was dying and Amanda suddenly became his favorite again, visiting just often enough to ask about the deed to the cabin. But I was ready. I wasn't the same woman who had stood in my parents' foyer last Christmas, waiting to be invited into a conversation. Now, I was writing the terms of engagement. That week, I gave Harper a folder. Inside were printed copies of the trust summary, the land valuation, the gallery poster with her photo. She looked at it all slowly. Quietly. "What is this?" she asked. I smiled gently. "Proof." She blinked. "Proof that you matter. That what you create matters. That your future doesn't rely on their approval." She didn't cry. Neither did I. We just sat there, side by side, in the dim glow of the living room lamp. I didn't need her to thank me. I needed her to remember. That Friday, Amanda called again. I let it go to voicemail. This time, her tone was different. "Hey, I know you've been busy. Mom's asking if you'd like to help plan Dad's retirement dinner. She thinks it'd be nice if we all collaborated." Collaborated. The word sat heavy in my chest. Like an invitation to a play I was no longer interested in pretending to enjoy. I poured a glass of water. Played the message twice. Then I began drafting a response. Not for Amanda. But for myself. A letter I would keep. One I might send. Maybe not now. But soon. Some people don't ask for power. They take it, with a smile, over brunch, while asking if you'll bring the dessert. The retirement dinner was set for mid-June. Amanda took the lead, naturally. Her emails were frequent and phrased like directives disguised as collaboration. She assigned me the closing toast. Said it would be meaningful for everyone if I spoke. As if I were the accessory to someone else's memory, not part of the memory itself. I didn't answer for days. Just watched the emails pile up, each one more presumptuous than the last. When I finally replied, I kept it simple. I'll attend. I'll speak. But I'm handling the venue. Amanda responded within 10 minutes. Oh. I thought we agreed on the walnut room? No, I replied. We didn't. It wasn't about the restaurant. It was about control. I booked a private space at the Graywell, quiet, elegant, and deliberately unfamiliar to them. I arranged the seating myself. No head table. Just a single long rectangle, every seat equal. My mother texted me 3 times that week. Short, clipped questions. Will there be valet? What's the dress code? Have you arranged for floral? I didn't reply. The night arrived heavy with humidity. I wore navy. No jewelry. Harper wore a soft gray dress and carried her camera like it was armor. They all arrived exactly 5 minutes early. Amanda in cream lace. My father in a new linen blazer. My mother clutching a pearl clutch she hadn't used in years. They blinked when they saw the room. Blushed faintly when they realized there were no place cards. Amanda hovered by the entrance, waiting for someone to rearrange the seating. No one did. I greeted them with a nod. No hugs. Dinner was pleasant in the way that things are when everyone is watching themselves too closely to be honest. My father made a few remarks. Amanda gushed about the catering. Harper stayed quiet. She watched everything. When it was time for the toast, I stood slowly. My glass was water. I won't take long, I said. But I do want to say something. Every face turned toward me. My mother's was already tense with anticipation. I looked at my father. You taught me a lot about patience, I said. About what it means to wait. And what it means to stop waiting. He tilted his head, unsure. I spent a lot of years thinking family was about tradition. About showing up. About keeping peace. I paused. But peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of fairness. And fairness, in this family, has always been uneven. Amanda stiffened. My mother sat very still. I continued. I'm grateful for what I've learned. Not just from you, but despite you. I raised my glass. To perspective. There was a long silence before anyone clinked their glass. I sat down, calm. Harper touched my hand beneath the table. Later, as people lingered near the door, Amanda approached. That toast was unnecessary. You're right, I replied. It wasn't necessary. It was overdue. She opened her mouth, then closed it. My mother walked past without making eye contact. Outside, the evening air was thick with rain about to fall. Harper and I stood beneath the awning, watching the sky. You okay? She asked. I nodded. I didn't say everything I wanted to. She smiled faintly. You said enough. The next morning, I woke to a message from my father. I don't know what you're trying to prove. But you made your mother cry. I stared at the screen. No anger. Just a confirmation of what I already knew. They didn't hear me. They only heard what I took away. I turned off the phone and made breakfast. Harper and I ate quietly, the way we always did. Slowly. Intentionally. The next day, a letter arrived at the hospital. No return address. Inside was a note, handwritten. We all have our ways of coping. I hope this makes yours easier. Folded inside was a cashier's check for $5,000. There was no signature. I knew it was Amanda. I handed the check to Meredith. Want to bet how fast this turns into a guilt trap? She looked at it. What are you going to do? Frame it, I said. Then burn it. That weekend, Harper's Gallery posted a photo of her on their social media page. The caption read, Young Artist Spotlight, Harper Mitchell, age 16. Her work reminds us what stillness reveals. The photo showed her beside one of her prints, the bench under the trees. My mother commented 3 days later. Beautiful. So proud of our granddaughter. Not Lauren's daughter. Just a claim. Public, performative, and void of substance. I didn't respond. But I screenshotted it and saved it to a folder I'd labeled records. In late July, Harper and I spent a weekend in Colorado. Walked the edge of the land together. She brought her camera. I brought the final trust packet. She knelt in the dirt beside a set of wildflowers. They don't look like much from the road, she said. No, I agreed. Most beautiful things don't. We signed the final documents at a small cafe in town. A notary named Marla stamped everything. Big gift, she said softly as she handed back the papers. No, I said. It's a correction. On the drive back to the airport, Harper slept. I kept one hand on the wheel and one on the folder in my lap. By the time we landed back home, my decision was made. There would be one final meeting. Not to argue. Not to beg. Just to inform. And this time, they wouldn't be the ones calling it. Truth rarely lands like thunder. Sometimes it arrives in a manila envelope, set carefully on a polished dining table. I chose a Sunday afternoon. No holidays. No distractions. Just a window of stillness between errands and expectation. They came because I asked them to, and because they still believed, somewhere under all the silence, that I was capable of forgiveness if spoken to the right way. Amanda wore beige slacks and a pinched expression. My mother arrived with lipstick already smudged at the edges. My father said nothing as he walked through the door, just nodded toward Harper's shoes by the entryway. I didn't offer drinks. I didn't ask how they were. The envelope sat in the center of the table. Closed. Waited with intention. Amanda glanced at it the moment she sat down. I began without ceremony. I'm not here for reconciliation. I'm here to clarify the future. My mother blinked. I continued. You're not in my will. Neither of you are. The estate is no longer accessible to anyone but Harper. Amanda crossed her arms. You didn't have to make this dramatic. I looked at her. This isn't dramatic. It's administrative. She shifted in her seat. I slid the envelope forward. Inside are copies of the updated trust documents. The mineral rights. The property deed. The valuation. You're welcome to review them. My mother opened her mouth. Closed it. Then said, Why would you do this? I didn't smile. I didn't rage. I just told the truth. Because I gave you decades to show up for her. And you didn't. The silence that followed was thick. Familiar. Amanda reached for the envelope, opened it, skimmed. This is excessive. No, I said. It's exact. My father finally spoke. You're hurting your family. No, I replied. I'm protecting mine. He looked away. My mother cleared her throat. You know how we were raised. We didn't talk about feelings. That's not an excuse, but it's the only explanation you ever give, I interrupted. And I'm tired of trying to make neglect sound reasonable. She flinched. Just barely. Then said, You're cruel when you want to be. I met her gaze. No, I said. I'm just finished being edited. The room fell quiet again. Amanda stood. So that's it? You've decided we don't matter? I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I hadn't decided that. They had. Over years of erasure. Of invitations that never came. Of chairs not set. Of birthdays skipped. Milestones ignored. I wasn't punishing them. I was writing the final footnote on a chapter they'd never read. I walked them to the door. No hugs. No pretense. As she stepped outside, my mother turned back. You always were dramatic. And I said nothing. Because at that point, there was nothing left to correct. Harper came downstairs 10 minutes later, eyes searching my face. I nodded once. She exhaled. We spent the evening in the living room, no music, no TV. Just the quiet rhythm of two people existing beside each other in peace. That week, I received 3 emails from Amanda. The first was angry. The second was a list of grievances disguised as memories. The third was an offer to mediate the situation and possibly reconsider the structure of Harper's inheritance if it would bring the family closer again. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I forwarded them to Thomas. He confirmed they were irrelevant legally and advised I maintain silence. There's power in letting people hear their own echo, he said. So I did. At the hospital, things returned to their usual pace. Summer brought heatstroke and car accidents, but also long, slow overnight shifts with time to think. Meredith asked if I felt relieved. Yes, I said. And a little cold inside. She didn't try to fix it. Just handed me coffee. Harper started taking evening walks alone, camera slung over her shoulder. One night she showed me a picture she'd taken, a tree split by lightning but still standing, half leaves, half char. She titled it, Survival. I stared at it for a long time. In August, I received a call from an old friend of my grandfather's, someone I hadn't spoken to since his funeral. He said, "I heard what you did with the land. Harold would have been proud." I hung up, sat very still, and let that settle into the hollow places. Because that's all I had ever wanted, not approval, but alignment. To do what he would have done, even if no one saw it. In September, the gallery invited Harper to submit again, this time for a citywide youth showcase. She said yes. Quietly. Firmly. When I asked if she wanted to tell her grandparents, she shook her head. They wouldn't come. She said it without anger. Just certainty. That night, I opened a new account. A small one. Just mine. Labeled later. Not for emergencies. Not for obligations. But for something neither of us could name yet. Maybe a trip. Maybe a new lens. Maybe just a soft landing somewhere unknown. I didn't tell anyone about it. Not even her. The next day, I mailed back the cashier's check from Amanda. I didn't include a note. Let her wonder. Let her imagine all the things I could have said. Let silence be the only thing that answered back. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about weight. Distribution. Balance. And in the stillness that followed that strange, sterile meeting, I felt it shift. Not dramatically. But finally. Some endings don't announce themselves. They just fade, like the last note of a song you didn't realize was playing until it stopped. It's been 6 months since the meeting. No one has called. Not Amanda. Not my mother. Not even my father, whose silence had always masqueraded as peacekeeping. At first, I waited for something, a backlash, a family-wide intervention, even a last-ditch guilt trip wrapped in nostalgia. But none came. Just the quiet withdrawal of people who only participate in relationships they control. And somehow, that silence became a kind of music. A low, unfamiliar rhythm that allowed the rest of my life to breathe. Harper's Showcase opened on a cold Friday in November. The gallery was packed, students in mismatched blazers, teachers from half the city, and strangers with curious eyes and disposable wine cups. Her work hung beside 20 others, but it drew a small, steady crowd. People lingered. Pointed. Whispered. She stood at the edge of it all, posture straight, hands clasped behind her back. Watching. Not with pride, not exactly, but with ownership. Like someone who knew her own worth but didn't need to perform it. Later, as we left, she said, "I think I want to apply to the conservatory downtown." I nodded. "Do it." She smiled. I already printed the application. It was late, and the air was sharp. The kind of cold that makes silence feel clean. We walked slowly to the car. No rush. No pressure. Just space. That weekend, I cleaned out the hallway closet. The one filled with old linens, photo albums, and things I'd been too tired to sort. I found an old envelope addressed to me in my grandfather's handwriting. No stamp. Probably handed off and forgotten. Inside was a single line, "Take care of the roots, and the tree will know what to do." I sat on the floor for a long time, just holding that page. Not crying. Not even thinking. Just absorbing. Because I understood now what he meant. He didn't mean legacy. Or tradition. He meant clarity. He meant that there's a difference between passing things down and passing things on. One is inheritance. The other is intention. At the hospital, Meredith got promoted. I brought her a coffee with a sticky note that read, "About damn time." She laughed so hard she snorted, then threatened to frame it. We talked more openly now. About burnout. About staying. About leaving. Neither of us had answers, but there was relief in being uncertain together. I updated my will. Left everything to Harper, with a provision for a non-profit we'd talked about starting someday, something quiet and local, maybe scholarships for girls in public schools who couldn't afford supplies for the arts. Nothing flashy. Just enough to notice. In December, Harper and I skipped the family text thread entirely. No polite Merry Christmas. No pretending. We flew to Portland instead, stayed in a rented cabin and spent the holiday drinking hot chocolate and editing her new photo series. It was called Objects Left Behind. Every image was of something abandoned. A glove on a bench. A necklace in snow. A half-burned candle on a windowsill. They were stunning. On New Year's Eve, she asked me if I regretted anything. I thought about it. Really thought. Then said, no. She didn't ask for details. Just leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, me neither. It was the most peace I'd ever felt. January came. Life returned to its slower rhythm. Work. Walks. Groceries. Her application submitted. My small savings account labeled later slowly growing. Then, in early February, a letter came. Postmarked from Florida. My father's handwriting on the envelope. Inside was a photograph. Black and white. A candid shot of me as a child, standing in the family garden beside my grandfather. He was mid-laugh. I was looking at the dirt. Hands full of something small and growing. No note. No explanation. Just that single image. I stared at it for a long time. Not with anger. Not with longing. But with something softer. Maybe grace. Maybe detachment. I placed it in a drawer. It didn't need a frame. Some stories don't deserve to be displayed. Just remembered, for what they taught, not for how they ended. Spring came slowly. The kind of spring that doesn't bloom overnight but pushes up through old, frozen ground with patience. Harper got her acceptance letter in March. She ran into my room, waving it like a flag. I took it from her hands, read it once, then again. She watched my face. We did it, she said. No, I replied. You did. She cried then. The way teenagers do when it finally hits them that they are real and seen. I held her until she stopped shaking. Later that night, she taped the letter to the fridge. I didn't touch it. Just passed by it every day like it was a prayer. In April, I stood in our backyard, the one I'd once hoped would hold family cookouts, laughter, reconciliation. Now it held herbs. And silence. And a birdbath Harper insisted we put in last fall. I looked around and felt something unshakable settle in me. This life, this narrow, imperfect, intentional life, was enough. Not because it sparkled. But because it was honest. Harper brought me a cup of tea. Said, you look like you're somewhere far away. I smiled. I'm not. She sat beside me. We didn't speak. Just watched the wind bend the thyme and oregano, soft as breath. And I knew, in that moment, without doubt or hesitation. We were done surviving them. We had started becoming ourselves.